Comrade over there.
I wonder if I can ask two or three obvious questions, but important questions regardless of the fact they're obvious. The first one is, how do you explain the fact that Khruschev revisionism was able to take root, grow and develop to such an extent that 3 years after Stalin's death, the party Congress overwhelmingly supports what Khruschev is saying, the Central Committee supports what Khruschev is saying, and the party of Stalin as a whole supports what Khruschev is saying. Second point, as you mentioned, the counter-revolution that was attempted in Hungary, and there's a lot of debate in the yellow press, as you refer to them, as to whether or not that counter-revolution had the support of a majority of people in Hungary. My question is, even if it had the support of the majority in Hungary, was it still legitimate, was it still necessary, and was it still right for the Soviet Union to give assistance to quell that counter-revolution? And the third question, probably the document that embodies Khrushchev revisionism more than any is the British Road to Socialism, and yet the British Road to Socialism was implemented or produced in 1951. Now that's 5 years before the secret speech at the party Congress. It's 2 years before Stalin's death. We're also told that Stalin approved the British Road to Socialism, and indeed some people are now claiming that Stalin actually was the author of the British Road to Socialism. Does that not suggest that Stalin himself is the father of Khrushchev?
Very good. Then you want to answer any of those three questions?
Yeah.
One, how come within 3 years of the death of Stalin, Khrushchev?
I did point out, I mean, first of all, the Khrushchevites didn't just suddenly appear on the death of Stalin. These people wormed their way into the party and sat there for quite a long time, biding their time. Once they'd got to positions of power, and certainly after the death of Stalin, then there were a wholesale ejection of Marxist-Leninists from the party. They were basically removed from office or from the party itself, so that they made themselves strong. I mean, as we would in reverse, if we were, or rather, in a revolutionary situation where you take power, you remove the people from power who oppose you.
Yeah, generally speaking, we're told that the Central Committee, for example, between 38 and 52, 70% of the Central Committee is removed, killed, imprisoned, or whatever. Now, your suggestion is the Khrushchev revisionists that are doing that, or is it Stalin that's doing that? How is it possible for the Khrushchev revisionists to get control of the party of Stalin, the party of the proletariat at that place in time? I understand that Molotov said about Khrushchev intrigue. It's always difficult to deal with intrigue amongst your colleagues and your comrades. But surely for revisionism to take root at that stage, there must be a social movement, there must be more than just the political machinations at a higher level.
Well, you've got to remember, Trotskyism has also done its work.
In the course of class struggle, nothing is over till it's over. Class struggle carries on all the time in society, and Stalin has been attacked for saying that class struggle continues in the conditions of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Stalin understood that with the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat in the Soviet Union and even the building of socialism, class struggle had not disappeared. The basis for class struggle was both national and international. The basis of class struggle existed to the extent that commodity production had not been abolished in the Soviet Union. It would take a long time to get rid of collective farming and commodity production on the market. But what was true was that the dictatorship of the proletariat was able to exercise sufficient control to prevent the emergence of capitalism in the Soviet Union during that time. But at any given time in the history of the Soviet Union, opportunist elements could have won. There was a constant struggle going. They could have done at the time of Brest-Litovsk. They didn't. Had they won, the Soviet Union would have collapsed then. They could have won during the debates on the question of whether the Soviet Union should industrialize or not. If Bukharin, Zinoviev, or Kamenev, or Trotsky had won, Soviet Union would have gone at that time. These are earlier day Gorbachevs. The line was held quite well by Stalin under his leadership. Number of things happened. During the Second World War, a huge number of very advanced cadres are destroyed because they were the first to enlist in the war, and they were destroyed on the front where a lot of people who would have been far more vigilant simply disappeared. So after the death of Stalin, the leadership was bamboozled by Khruschev and company. Molotov says in his memoirs that we didn't give a very good account of ourselves. While Stalin was alive, we sang from the same hymn sheet, but after he died, Khrushchev was able to run rings around him. You can look at the history of your own parties in this country, for example, how some pretty third-class elements were able to run rings around some very intelligent and very clever comrades. That happens. That, unfortunately, is going to carry on for a long time, and we can learn a lesson from it. But you can't just say, because soon after Stalin's death, Khrushchev came, it must be Stalin's fault. Because by arguing like that, you're really coming pretty close to Marx. You know, Marx left behind Engels, Engels left behind Lenin, Lenin left behind Stalin. Of course, there are a lot of people who don't like Stalin, so they'll have to blame Lenin for that soon after Lenin, Stalin came to power. This is not a very good way of arguing, because the main thing is in class struggle, nothing is ever determined. Who will come out on top depends on a number of circumstances. The fact of the matter is that the Khrushchevites were able to get out over on top. Khrushchevites could have been controlled if the international communist movement had united against the Khrushchevites. It didn't. The prestige of the Soviet Union was such. Khrushchev was the general secretary. Khrushchev was the third in line after Lenin and Stalin, and therefore he enjoyed that practice, and he used and abused that position of his in the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. At that time, it was the Chinese and the Albanians who were sought to be isolated, regarded as sectarian. They were abused by tin-potty little parties who went bankrupt very shortly afterwards anyway. So it's very important in questions of class struggle not to say it's Stalin's fault. It's not Stalin's fault. Stalin fought as hard as he could. As you know, his last work is The Economic Problems of Socialism in the USSR. What is that book concerned with? It is fighting against revisionism in the economic sphere. Exactly the sort of thing that Khrushchevites, having come to power, actually went on to implement in order to destroy socialism, not in one day, not in 1 year, but over a period of three and a half decades. So as an individual, you can only do as much as you can. But an individual has the ultimate limitation that an individual must die one day. Now, he cannot live forever to be able to carry on with the struggle. It leaves it to his comrades. If the comrades haven't come up to that standard, it's just unfortunate sad. There were good comrades, there's Kaganovich, there's Molotov, there were a number of others who were not able to acquit themselves very well, and other people came to power, and they laid the foundations for the restoration of capitalism. That's the only way to look at that.